Good evening, folks. Red County Blue Nation, Stephen Rourke, Jim McMahon. How are you tonight, Jimmy?
We're doing good. It's another chilly night at 8,500 feet. So yeah,
Wintertime in the Rockies.
how you doing?
I'm cold. We're out here in the garage at the podcast session here at the bar that we have, and my garage it's heated, but it's at 50 right now. I hate to heat it up because then,
Kind of a waste.
yeah, heat up 5,000 square foot just for 1 hour and
Yeah.
1 hour a week. So we just have to grin and bear it, I guess.
The pipes ain't freezing. We'll be all right.
No, there's a long ways from freezing. I mean, it's actually really a good
Yeah.
setup. I mean, this is well insulated and it doesn't take much. It'll almost stay 50 in here with no heat, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of pansy time. We've been in by the fire, and so it come out here to 50. We're like, brr,
Shell shocked.
basically turning wussy, but is what it is. Where you want to get started, bud? I guess a lot of things going on. Still working, of course, every day to figure out a logical solution for the Justice Center. As we've stated before, there's going to be some compliance issues that we need to address. And we're going to, as time goes on, we'll have a better chance to address some of that stuff. There's definitely regulations that state what we have to do. And one of the things that's misleading is what they call a mandate. And they say, well, it's mandated. Of course, we talked about this last week. If it's mandated, why would you have to, or why would you vote on it if it's mandated? I just don't make no sense. One of the things that has changed and is a continual change in our society, and that's why it's kind of, old books are good. Books are good, folks.
Absolutely.
So these older dictionaries, I mean, if you got a dictionary from pre-60s, I guess I'm going to say, if you have a dictionary 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s and 70s, and maybe even 80s or whatever, a lot of that stuff is different than what it is now. So there's a couple of the big words out there, the big T word, the TERR word, and the BAC word, and all of that stuff. They've changed the definition of these words to kind of suit their narrative. And that's where I'm going with the word mandate. Mandate really is more of a guideline. It's not law. And we spoke about that last week. And it is what it is. So it's easy to throw around, well, it's mandated, and that's what the commissioners are trying to tell us about this Justice Center. But I'm not believing it. I hope that you don't either.
Well, it's hard to believe that the governor, the state, could go around and tell all these little red counties. First and foremost, we couldn't afford to staff it with the nurses. Affordability has got to enter into that decision making. So it sounds a little nonsensical to me, unless somehow they're going to cut the check.
Well,
But we still end up paying for it somewhere along the line.
somebody has to pay. And
The government has no money. They don't make money.
Well,
They
do.
collect it and spend it.
They do make money. That's why we have inflation so bad, because they just keep printing it.
Oh, yeah, well, they print money. They don't earn it, and there's a profit attached to it. But a lot of people think, oh, the government will take care of it. Government doesn't have any money. It's all tax money.
Well, and a lot of the stuff I've been learning too, I mean, it's nothing but a debt note. It's not actual hardcore asset, right? It's just a debt note from the Federal Reserve. And so at a later time, we can go through that. That's a whole different creature. Trying to work on not saying so much, but it still happens. One of the things that seems to be one of the new things, and you can't hold us to it because we don't have living proof yet, but we're working on it. We have some resources that are working on our behalf that state that the Justice Center was donated. And so that brings up a lot more questions for me. Is there something more sinister here going on with this Justice Center than we even realized? So, I mean, I hate to say anything about it till we know for sure. We've already spoken that the head of planning and zoning was under the impression still 3 weeks ago or a month ago or however long, less than 2 months ago, was under the impression that the Justice Center ground was donated. So,
A couple years ago.
what's that?
Was that a couple years ago?
Well, when our sources were talking to this individual, that was less than 2 months ago.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's still, well, I guess where I'm going with that is that she was still under the impression just recently that was the case.
And that conversation where she believed that was from 3-4 years ago, maybe something of that nature.
2018, so it's
Yeah.
almost 7 years
So
ago
almost
now.
7 years ago, and she was still under that impression.
Still under that impression the whole time. And there's been some, like I said, we once we have the breaking news, we'll bring that to you, but it looks like there's some newspaper articles that went out that stated to the public that ground was donated.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's
Pretty big contrast.
well, it brings up all kind of questions. So, like, could there somehow be some way that the ground was donated and now the county is embezzling this money?
And Steve,
And I'm not saying that that's the
No,
case by any means. It's
no.
just there now all these wild questions arise because they're so untransparent, and that's the problem with it, folks. Why? Why is there no records? Why is there no bookkeeping? Why is there no documentation for something that was supposed to be better than sliced bread?
Here again, it comes down to ethical behavior and procedures, where you don't create an environment of suspicion. And the suspicion in this county with the stuff that's taking place,
It is
just rampant.
It's so far.
It's so rampant.
It's so far and beyond. I mean, Ray Charles can see this.
Absolutely. So, anyways, we got some investigating going on. We're doing some.
We have some people working behind the scenes. We appreciate everybody that supports us. We had a decent donation here last week. Sure appreciate that.
Yeah, that was huge.
Yep. I mean, we've been putting this together on a shoestring, and I mean, we really haven't had a time. We're hoping to get a couple more cameras and a few different things to kind of, make it a little more high class. Short of building a whole new studio, I'm not sure that how much more we can actually do besides some small modifications. The whole fact of the matter, though, that they would write an article to the local papers saying that ground was donated, all the while they have a lease and they've been paying that money. I mean, it is hard for me to wrap my head around what.
Well, at least with the interest.
Yeah. Not to mention that it's leased with interest. I mean, let's walk through some of the scenarios here. Let's try to paint a picture. Number one, let's say that they actually did donate the ground. If that's the case, then where are they paying the money to? And I don't think that doesn't seem to me to be reasonable. I mean, that from what I can tell, we have pulled a core request for the last December of 2024 of the payments made, and there is a payment there to the Chet Haga Trust. And so I find it hard to believe that they could pay that money to someone else besides the Chet Haga Trust. I mean, I guess there's stranger things have happened. I mean, the Chet Haga Trust is, that's a pretty sizable, Chet Haga back in the day owned quite a bit of property, Silver West Estates. There's a lot of different property that would be involved in that conglomeration of what Chet Haga owned. So it's not just like it's just this one little 6.6 acre piece of property that they maybe built the Chet Haga Trust around that property. I know that's not the case. So I just find it hard to believe that they could be making the payments that say it's to the Chet Haga Trust and it's not actually going to the Chet Haga Trust.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to add up. But yet, I mean, if there's actually people that would write a letter to the editor of the paper saying that it was donated, I mean, that's about as bold-faced lie as you can come across. And that's, I mean, we can dig into this part. We can paint a scenario of that. Why would they do that?
So that's the $1 million three-lettered question is why. And then if proper procedures would have been properly filed with the clerk and recorder, with the minutes, the discussions, and all how the process worked, we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. But there's none, zero.
And we do hear now that another one of our investigative arms, supposedly one of the commissioners, has said that there is some records, but it belongs to this certain individual.
This person that was on the committee has possession of a lot of the paperwork.
Was that it? They were on the committee? I thought it was a state official that had the paperwork.
I think it was the gal yeah. So I don't know if that gal was on the committee. Maybe she oversaw the committee.
The way that I understood it, and we can shore all this up. It's just we're trying to paint all these scenarios. But it sounds, from my interpretation of hearing the discussion last night, was that this lady was a state official of some sort. She wasn't involved with the county, is the way that I understood it, and I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
We're just doing our best to explain some of the stuff that is up and coming, and please don't, we're not trying to lay any falsehoods, but I mean, the suspicion is already so far blown that we know that something's up, folks. We know that something's up. How can you spend that kind of money and in debt people for that long over something that's up on board without transaction receipts, minutes of the meeting, who got paid to do what? We did figure out that through one of the meeting minutes, they paid $10,000 to do a poll.
Survey, huh?
They did $10,000 to do a survey of the people of the county. Like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, the money is like going through a colander, right? I mean, the money is just squirting out every damn hole all the way around this thing.
Yeah,
And there's no transaction receipts, there's no accountability, there's nothing. We just know that the money's gone.
should be a file that has expenditures and then receipts that went with those expenditures.
And that's one of the things, folks. I mean, we hate to be assumptive here, but why won't they let us look at the books? And it stands to reason that, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if you're hiding something, you have this particular behavior. You have this pattern of behavior that you behave this way when you have something to hide. And so, I mean, the fact of the matter that the zoning and planning lady thinks that it was donated, the prior zoning and planning lady thinks that it was told that it was donated. Nothing on her character at all. She's a very upstanding gal. Known her a long time. Think a lot of her. All of that's all on board. It's nothing to do with her. What it is the people that told her that. That's what we're talking about here. The deception of why somebody in that position would even have a chance to think that. And she obviously was told by more than one person. And I mean, we'll just name them again. It's Tom Flower. It's Bill Kanda. It's Jay Prince. It's Shannon Byerly. It's Ann Barthrop. It's all these people. It's this same group of people that are at the wheel of this thing. And Bill has been so kind. Sure, not trying to throw Bill under the bus, but we have a lot of questions for him. And he's told us multiple times that he's willing to come on the podcast. So hopefully here within the next month, we can get Bill on and let him go through some of these questions and get some answers. I mean, I've known Bill. I haven't known Bill personally that long. My dad has. My dad used to work at the sawmill, at Kansas Sawmill, when Bill was a boy. So, I mean, this is a long time, many years of people interacting with each other. And we need some answers, and we demand answers because it is fishy, folks. I mean, it smells like the ocean here. It's bad. I mean, it's fishy.
It is. And there's other little things, the behavior. It's a pattern of the last, I would say, at least 7 years. Just a continuous pattern of behavior, of unethical behavior. I'm going to leave it at that. Not that I don't know if anything's happened or not, but if you don't take that extra measure of ethics.
Well, let's go back through what we know. We know that in 2018, the certified value at the Custer County Courthouse assayor's office was $129,000. We know that the contract was worth $876,000, if my mind serves me right. So you're going to pay however many more times that is for ground that there was other people that owned more ground and wanted to sell it cheaper than $129,000. There was 10 acres over on the other side of the West Cliff Inn there, between there and Ace, that was offered around 10 acres, offered at $100,000. So why? It just doesn't add up at all. If it was just and on top of the board, why they would pay $800 and some thousand for something that's only worth $129,000. It just, there's no rhyme or reason. It's obvious what's going on here, folks. And so we had this discussion last night, and I tried to, the group of people that we were talking about, I said, I'm not trying to say that this is what I think happened, but I'm saying let your mind paint a scenario here of how this could unfold this way, right? And the only thing that I can come back with time after time after time is that somebody made money off of it, right? A lot of people say, well, maybe they're going to get their name on the Justice Center. Well, maybe so. In my world, that would amount to nothing, because I don't care about my name being on something like that. Maybe somebody else, maybe that would mean more to them. And I can understand that.
People's value system's different.
But not to the fact that you're going to give whatever 600 plus 750, $725,000 more for this piece of ground because you want your name on it. None of that adds up. The only thing that adds up is that they got paid. They got paid. They took money under the table. They've taken essentially a bribe. You can call it. I mean, I'm going to call it a bribe. It's bribing a public official. You're talking about the sheriff. You're talking about the commissioners.
The judge was on that deal.
The judge was on that deal. I mean, these people.
So that's what I'm saying. The whole thing with the caliber of people that were on that committee, you would have thought they'd have had all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted, and it would have been above board. Here's a file. Let's make sure we can report to the people adequately. We're going to track this.
One thing I would like to know, during this time, I actually was working out of state, so I wasn't here during that time frame so much. But I never remember, and of course I wasn't in a position to really care that much, so it would have been very easily for me to miss that. But I would like to know if there's anybody out there in the audience that can remember a poll being conducted for the Justice Center.
I was here because I ain't left.
And so I know it was in 21 is when they did that. I believe it was on the April commissioners meeting. April 21 is when they spent the money to have the poll. But I'm just not that it has any bearing on anything, but I just was curious if anybody can ever remember a poll that caught. Can you folks remember any type of a poll that they spent $10,000 on to get your opinion about the Justice Center? And I mean, it just does not add up, right? There is something wrong here. There is something wrong. Somebody is getting paid off, and something is crooked as a dog's hind leg here, or it wouldn't be going down like this. There's too many obvious acts of deception to try to lead you away from the real. Oh, I want everybody to see it too, if you didn't already know. So this is the Colorado flag mixed with the United States flag. I know sometimes we can't see that. I just wanted to mention that. This whole effect of how they've spent this money, and they've gotten away, they've somehow been advised by what we think are potentially these nonprofit organizations. CCI, I mean, that's a lot of this all boils back to CCI, Colorado Counties Incorporated. It's a nonprofit organization. I mean, we're not trying to say that it's completely run by liberals or whatever, but the ideas, in my opinion, are socialistic. I mean, it says right on there about they're going to try to initiate Biden's 30% of the country will be given back to the people. I mean, this whole, we're going to make America beautiful. Let's get real, folks. All they're trying to do is take that ground from you so that they can take control of it and take it away from you and then use it for their own personal gain. They have no intention of giving it back to you. I mean, that's why there's a bunch of big swaths of public ground now, like in Utah, that you can't go on. They won't let you within anywhere of that. So Colorado Counties Incorporated, bad deal.
I would suggest folks that have an interest in what's going on in the state of Colorado, boy, go to that website and digest it yourself. A lot of it, that's the one you can't get into a lot of this stuff, right?
Well, so a lot of it you can. Let me get my note card. So you go to CCI, it's Colorado Counties Incorporated. You click on the run across the top to where it says resources. Then you go to the library of resources. And so that's where we're getting some of this stuff. One of the things that was real mind-boggling, and we'll get into that in a minute, is about how to hire. And that's how Braden Wilson got in there. Braden Wilson was hired by the template that was brought forth through Colorado counties. And so this part of this, where the hiring of that, so ACCA, which I'm not sure what that is, but CCCMA, Colorado City and County Management Association, the CCI Foundation, affiliate of Colorado Counties Incorporated, CML, Colorado Municipal League, the voice of Colorado cities and towns, Department of Local Affairs from the state of Colorado. I mean, these are all, if these were legit, and maybe I'm posing this to anybody that might have the answer. Maybe I'm not as educated on it as as my opinion wants to state. But why is a non-profit, non-elected, non-government organization, right? So if it was a government organization, folks, it wouldn't be non-profit. So, I mean, that's clear cut. Non-profit means that it's a private entity. So why would a private entity be in control of telling the county how to act? And it's not just one. There's a ton of these. And they're all socialist ideas behind the bottom of it. Oh, well, we're going to be inclusive, and we want diversity, and we can see how that worked for Los Angeles, right? I mean, them poor people are burned up because of the inadequacy of socialism and the concept of liberalism, right? Them people are paying with everything that they had. I'm surprised that there wasn't more deaths. I mean, whatever they say happened in North Carolina, there's only 200 deaths. I don't believe that. Wouldn't surprise me if it's like 10,000 deaths. I mean, there's so many people buried here and there that they'll never know the count. But I'm grateful that a lot of people didn't burn alive. I mean, when you're talking about 100-mile-an-hour winds, I mean, if you're familiar with the wind around here, you can only imagine that if it was blowing flames, 100-foot high flames at you, I mean, there would be no way to get away from it.
Well, the ambers are just.
Yeah, I mean, and the heat out in front of that, I mean, it'll almost cook the skin right off you before the flames ever get to you.
If this, yeah, between the smoke and the ambers, you're pretty much done deal. But,
Yeah.
And that place burnt real bad in '62. They know how dangerous that place can be, and not doing a lot of mitigation or having.
And
The prevention,
to drop
you know.
the funding, you know, the mayor gets trashed because she said she would never leave the country, but yet she's in Angola or wherever, Africa somewhere, doing whatever that she felt that she needed to be doing, while her duty as a mayor of LA, and then people are, I mean, 15,000 acres. That one fire alone was like 14,000 some acres. That's more than the whole island of Manhattan. Just to give you some idea of how much scope of ground. But enough about that. I mean, we're just kind of trying to throw that in there. But what we're talking about is we're talking about liberal policies. And so these policies that are initiated by this Colorado Counties Incorporated is one of the main things. And so let me look over here at my email. I sent this to myself earlier so we could look at it with you.
It's the influence that they have. And that's one of the things we've got to do is educate people that are going to be elected officials. That's why we're making a test and trying to help people get somewhat aware of how to be an elected official.
And so here they go through and say, well, and right, so education is great, right? I mean, in my opinion, I find it hard to believe that somebody could get elected for such a high-paying job out of that large a pool of people that wasn't qualified. It's hard for me to believe that. but I know it happens. I guess the people that are qualified are either in the public or in the private sector doing their own work.
So where I'm going to go with that real quick is the driving force behind a lot of politicians is there's an agenda behind them. And a lot of them are pure and right and constitutional and patriotic, absolutely. But there's some of them are a little bit opposite of that. And then they have funding that's pretty extensive to fund them, to get them in a position of influence as an elected official. And that's just the times we're living in. It's a pretty big upheaval, but it's time we the people stand up and start holding them accountable.
So we'll post this 30-page document on the website so you can look at it. But it's under Colorado Counties Incorporated. It's under the resources, Library of Resources. How to hire a local government administrator. And so this is not just a regular somebody that needs to work at the local government, right? This is a particular thing, what they call the county manager. And that's where we're going to get into the deal with Braden Wilson. How he got hired is explained in this 30-page document by CCI. And basically what they're doing is circumventing the law.
Absolutely.
And they're telling you all these ways that you can get around it. What did the attorney say?
He thought it was defensible.
Defensible, right? So you don't have to follow the law. We think we can defend wrongdoing. Like, that's the problem that we're talking about, folks. That's the problem of the whole world, is that this socialistic, liberalistic agenda of people's mindset where they no longer, with the Common Core in the schools, where they no longer can determine the difference between right and wrong.
Right. And this is another one of those suspicious behaviors, because that kid was in there for 2 years with them books.
And he couldn't figure his way out of a wet paper bag.
They promote him. I mean, and then give him a $50,000 severance pay.
Couldn't even get the credit cards paid, folks. They couldn't make the CIC system work. So what do? They go get a bunch of credit cards. All the while he's telling everybody, "Oh, it's fine. Hell, it's everything."
Month after month on the report, the conversion's going well. We're doing great with it. Lie after lie after lie.
But Kevin Day, which we're glad that he didn't get elected again, or I am. If you read closely through this document, you can understand how they made the decisions that they made. So
yes,
not necessarily trying to put nothing personal on Kevin, but what we're trying to do here is let people know how Colorado Counties Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that's influencing the elected officials, are putting these thought processes and these procedures that are against the law.
Absolutely.
It says right here at the end.
Right at the bottom, it mentions the statute that they got to follow.
Appendix C, open meetings and records law considerations.
Unbelievable.
Several provisions in the Colorado Open Meetings Law and Open Records Act affect the hiring of a municipal manager. These provisions generally relate to employment processes, materials submitted by applicants, and disclosures of the names of finalists. An introduction to these provisions is set forth below. However, readers are advised that this is an overview and should not substitute an advice from your own municipal attorney. That's where it comes in, where we're talking about the attorney when it says it's defensible, right? They don't care about trying to do things right. All they care about is trying to be able to keep from getting caught acting illegitimate. Employment process, open meeting. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Open meeting law requires that a search committee of a local public body establishes job search goals, including the writing of a job description, deadlines for applications, requirements of the applications, selected procedures, and the time frame of appointing or employing a chief executive officer at an open meeting. One of the questions that has been raised in connection with this language HB 96-1314, which is whether it applies when a local government does not formally designate a search committee, such as when the governing body itself conducts the process of hiring a chief executive officer. So now Jimmy knows a lot about this. So the thing is so Braden Wilson was the HR finance guy. And so he's the one that's interviewing these applicants. And how in the hell does somebody that doesn't even have a college degree, his college degree is in business hospitality, is that right?
Yeah, it's hospitality.
Hospitality degree. How does he be more qualified than some of the other candidates? And so, I mean, it just reeks. I mean, he's on record, right, telling Tom, you promised me the job.
We pulled an executive meeting, the minutes of an executive meeting.
And that's the thing, right? They go into these executive meetings to try to keep it from the public. But we were able to get one tape. There was another tape that we wanted, and they said they would give it to us, and then Kevin reneged.
Yeah. Yep. And that was a really big slap in our face, too, there, because that would have exposed some of the decision making and just how slanted this was. They'd hired him, found out that they couldn't hire him just like that, so they had to rescind the hiring of him.
Disclosure of the
so
names.
So it was already tainted. The whole thing was tainted.
Did you ever see a list of the finalists?
You can't get the names. And I was trying to get just the resumes.
This says right here.
Just the resume.
Disclosure of the names of the finalists. As noted above, under the Open Records Act, information concerning an applicant must be released once the applicant becomes a finalist. You have to tell them who the hell it is. And there was nothing of any of that
Couldn't
done.
get it. Asked for it and couldn't get it.
Braden's throwing all the other applications in the trash can.
That's the irritating thing about doing the public's business. When you can't account for your decision making, and it looks like you're very biased or slanted, and here again, all this bookkeeping thing with the Justice Center, all the COVID money, some weird stuff went on there, and then they promote this person that got in there that couldn't implement the CIC software, the double entry bookkeeping deal, $140,000.
There wasn't
an astronomical amount of money.
Anybody that could implement the software, and I don't mean to talk bad about anybody, but I know Vern's been trying to do the best job that he can, but he was there from when that software was instigated
from the beginning.
And if he's so smart at doing the stuff now with Lucas,
yeah,
why didn't he figure it out then?
Yeah, and they have all the teaching, and then they bring people in from CIC, or you can get on the phone 24/7, 365, all the time. I looked through the contract and all the bells and whistles that it comes with. Man, it sounds like a pretty nice system. It's peopleware or something of that nature where it's designed to be user-friendly. And they couldn't get it together, but maybe they didn't want to get it together.
Well, and it seems like, I mean, I've heard other stories too about how the system, the people that they didn't support it, that it was almost ready to, I mean, it was like one of the lower grade systems for a lot more money than it needed to be. And why did they select this system?
You could have downloaded a higher quality system. I think you could have bought the rights to use it for $6,000 for $6,000. But the incompetency of they got a hunger buster hamburger flipper in there, doing a job where it should be $150,000 to $200,000. That is the hub of the county, is keeping track of the finances, the depreciations, Gatsby 87. There's so much bookkeeping involved nowadays. And to be able to administer grants properly, you can't just, we run out of little money over here, grab it from a grant over here. You're mixing and matching. It's deadly. It's deadly. All that stuff can be clawed back if it's not administered right.
Clawback, folks. If you don't understand what a clawback is the government sees that you haven't done these grants right, they come back in and claw that money back and they take it all from you, and then you're liable to pay for it. That happened in, which county was that? Got a clawback here a while back, and I mean, it busted their ass.
Well, and here again, that's the importance if it's your business, you can take risks like that. If it's the private sector,
And let's
you could do that all day long.
but who in the private sector will do that? Nobody.
Well, nobody's going to do that.
Nobody's going to go for 2 years that they can't keep their books straight.
No. That's what I'm saying. It's ludicrous
It's
on what's
ludicrous.
going on.
And Bill was the one that was in charge of the finance to start, right?
It's been hot potato, but then they came up with this lane thing.
Yeah, you can't
You
go
got to
out of
stay
your
in
lane.
your lane.
And so that let's talk about that. How it's actually it's their duty.
Sole responsibility of the three of them.
They all
together.
They all have to make these decisions, and if one of them doesn't see that it's right, and so Bill, that's what he did, right? He went to stop the check, and Virginia Trujillo, which she didn't have the authority to,
The treasurer.
and then Jordan gets in a lawsuit with Bill because I don't know, maybe he misunderstood what Bill's authority was. Bill is a signer on the account. He had every authority to stop that check.
Accused him of forgery.
Yeah, accused him of forgery, and his name is on the bank account. Virginia's is not.
The DA came down and investigated and said Billy Bob's the one that he's the signer on it. He's control of that money. He's the spender of it. Trujillo brings it in and spends it at the pleasure of the commissioners. That was such a breach. That was a huge breach and an overreach to me, in that where the treasurer.
Well, and
then the issuing of that check.
I wonder, yeah.
There was no controls in the bookkeeping department because
So-
it never should have left.
Yeah, so I mean, the bookkeeping department, they go into there. What was her name? Lisa?
Yep.
I can't remember what her last
I
name.
do, but I'm not going to say it because her husband tried to trip me on the way out the door, and they're pretty funny people once you start.
But anyhow, so I mean, they were all buddies with Braden, and they both went to work for Unicog, but Braden can't even hold it together to work for Unicog.
Yeah, he was a finance guy up there, and I think he got that job through the mayor over here at Silvercliff because they were buddy, and he also sat on the board of Silvercliff.
But they finally figured out that, man, this kid doesn't know anything. I mean, when you can't keep a job with somebody like Unicog, this highly liberal, super soft, money flying everywhere organization. I mean, when you can't do that, you obviously must not know anything about what you're doing.
You're actually very dangerous when you take on a position like that, and I kind of think that's kind of what we've had going on here, even in a couple other political groups. I'm not going to mention the name.
Oh, you mean the CCRCC? Yeah. Well, and let's get to that too, folks. Here's something that nobody wants to, that I don't think that they understand or that they recognize, is that these are elected positions. Even something as simple as the Custer County Republican Central Committee. A lot of the folks that are in them positions think that they're volunteers. Well, they're not. That's an elected position. So maybe you think you were a volunteer because you just happened to be the only person there that night when the position was open. And so you say, well, I'll do it. And so then you consider yourself a volunteer. But that's not the case. It's an elected position, elected public official. The Republican Party of the United States, folks. This is a big deal.
And the very first point of the consolidated voice of the republic is the precinct people.
Precinct committee person, PCPs.
Yeah, PCP. That's the first consolidation.
So there's six representatives to represent all of the voters, 20-some hundred Republican voters, and that's why we all think there's a lot of people that think that there needs to be more precincts, but there's a little small amount of people that don't think that there needs to be more precincts, because then they lose control of what they're doing.
So the elected officials compose quite a bit of that CCRCC.
And they do, because any elected official that's of the Republican Party has a vote with the Republican Party. So right now it's all three commissioners. You have the coroner, you have the sheriff, you have the assayer, you have the treasurer, you have the clerk. I mean, you have all them elected officials all have a vote on the CRCC.
And that's
CCRCC.
Yeah, the Central Committee here, and the Republican Central Committee here in Custer County. So that's the first tier of voting, and then it goes into the PCPs. So they can have two tiers according to the bylaws. If you have a certain thing to be voted on with the upper echelon, the elected officials.
Once again, elected officials, folks.
Yep. And
so the PCP, they're elected at the caucuses. So these are all elected officials. It has nothing to do with volunteer anything.
What it does have to do with is political fundraising, the campaign laws.
The campaign finance laws. That's what drives the actions. That's why every red cent has to be accounted for. Same way when you're running for a party, coroner, sheriff, commissioner, treasurer, all that stuff, you have very strict laws that you have to keep accounted for, and they have this outfit called Tracer, a state-run reporting system that every penny has to be accounted for in Tracer. And it's pretty serious. I mean, Pueblo just got fined $25,000 for not
complying to the Tracer stuff.
They did something. I'm not sure what it was, but
so it's serious.
Our little county here, I mean, this is the biggest fundraising year that they've ever had, to my knowledge. I think they raised around, I'm going to say 15 to 20 grand, somewhere in that. I don't know the exact numbers, but for many, many, many years, it would be hundreds or maybe $1,000 or $2 is all they ever raised. Well, I mean, if the state would come in and fine them $25,000, I mean, how many people are willing to go?
That'd be a pretty big deal.
Raise all these funds because everybody thinks they need to get paid. Well, I did this and I got to get paid and I need to get paid to paint the trailer and I did this and that and all this stuff. Well, who's going to take the time and the effort to try to raise this money to pay the state back? I mean, it would have decimated the Custer County Republican Committee.
Yeah. And one of the funniest things that took place there...
Or I shouldn't say it would have. Getting a fine from the state would decimate our committee, because who's going to put 5 years of effort in before this last year when they only made 1,000 or two? I mean, you're talking about 20 years of fundraising to try to pay the bill back.
Just to get back to zero.
Yeah, for free, right?
And one of the biggest things here, and here again, this is a big deal. Red County, blue state. They would love no more than to say, bam.
Yeah,
that's a big, big deal. So we have to take extra precaution and keep ourselves really above board and above reproach. And to be a good example of, yeah, we are diligent. We're good bookkeepers. We did everything.
Well, and the thing about it too, folks, is, I mean, that particular, in our county, it's such a small amount of transactions that it's really, I mean, it really is high school accounting. I mean, you're looking at maybe 50 transactions, right?
And here again, it's an educational thing in ethics on how to act. It's not your business. You're doing the public's business.
Yeah, because you're not a volunteer here. You're an elected official.
Well, you're held to the law. There's a higher expectation of your behavior. That's why the ethical laws come into all of this. And that's where we're losing it, in my opinion. So the education on becoming an elected official, or anybody that's going to be involved in politics, education. Start educating yourself now.
24-18-103, public trust breach of fiduciary duty, right? That's the problem that we're having on all these levels.
Yeah.
is that nobody can seem to keep the money straight. And there's a scrape going on with the Republican Party about the money, and there has been for several months. And I'm not sure really what the deal is. I mean,
It's bizarre.
I've kind of stepped back. I mean, we're in the business of reporting what we know. And what's going on there, I don't know. All I know is that there's a lot of scrape there about how the money was counted and who was responsible and how they went about it and all of this stuff. So there's a lot of discrepancy there. And it's a mess, I can tell you that. And then everybody wonders why there's nobody that wants to go to the Republican Party. I will say that I appreciate everybody that's tuning in right now, because our first week that the community, the CCRCC was kind enough to help us with the newsletter, we had 43 live viewers our first day.
Yeah, that was last week, right?
Week before.
Oh, it was a week before.
So I think.
I know, it's all running together.
It all runs together. But there's more people watching the podcast than shows up at the public meetings. And so I appreciate everyone for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the donations are very, very much appreciated to try to get things a little bit more set up.
And we're by no means flush. I mean, we'd appreciate any donations of any kind. There's a donate button on our website. You can donate any denomination you want, which we'd appreciate that in every fashion.
So one of the things, Stephen, that's coming to my mind right now is if we go to do a Colorado Opens Record Act request, where we're looking for some information and we're going to request it from Kelly Camper, the clerk and recorder, that costs money. So if people are wanting to be involved in that, because that's part of the discovery of trying to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, and so Colorado Open Records Act, CORA, as we call it, so they have to let us know, folks, it's our business. And that's one of the things that's so disappointing to me at the CCRCC is that we had public officials come in, election officials, not election officials, but campaign finance officials from the state. I forget her name, but
Oh, the mother and the son.
Eimer's her last name. Weston is his name, Weston Eimer. And I have that recording, but he told one of the ladies in the meeting, she says, well, they can't look at that information. And he says, you're completely wrong. This is public information. They have every right to look at the money. It's public money, folks. I mean, and so the twistedness that somebody says that you can't look at the money of a public organization,
Asinine.
and he burned her to the ground.
Torched her.
Torched
Worse
her
in
ass.
Southern California. I'm telling you.
I was happy to hear it too, but it doesn't. The thing about it is, it doesn't really change their. It
No.
didn't change anything.
No, and then they invited them. Those folks said, "Look, we'll come down here. You guys schedule a time. We'll give you a class on how to conduct yourselves in these positions and the do's and the don'ts and the whys and the what fors and things like that." They didn't have them come down here. That's why we're doing we're coming up with a test and some of the things that they are going to do. I want to be able to be instrumental in helping the younger group here. I mean, there's a nice group of young men and women here, full of integrity and love this valley, born and raised here. I'd love to be able to see them so well cultivated, in the realm of politics where they're not going to be.
And to try to say, I mean,
It's the future.
You're completely right, but that we've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again. It's not that hard, folks. We're talking about the difference between right and wrong. You have to go to class to know that you shouldn't let the door slam on some old lady, and I said that before. If you don't think that's the case, let me slam the door in your face and break your nose and see how you think about it then.
So at the end of
it ain't no good. And once you're on the backside of that action, then you understand, well, geez, that wasn't too good. That hurt. I got blood everywhere and my nose is flat. And that's the respect thing. That's the doing
to
the right,
others.
doing the right thing. And that's the whole, where we're at a real disadvantage here because of Common Core. And obviously education is the key. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm distracted and like irritated that we even have to deal with this. And I mean, I know it's the state, like humanity at this point has so many resources and we have so much knowledge, but yet here we are, 2/3 or 3/4 of the population of this whole planet don't know the difference between right and wrong because they haven't been taught that. 100 years ago, they were being taught that. Now they're not because of this UNICEF, Common Core, globalist-led dumbing down of the population. And that's what they're doing. They're teaching us to be dumb. You're smarter when you're a kindergartner than when you get out of college.
That's apparent in a lot of us. That's very apparent. But at the end of the day, we're recognizing the challenges.
And so Jimmy's right, you know, to educate some of these younger people about ethics. I mean, I can say right now, I know a couple young gals, they were actually homeschooled. I mean, they're firecrackers, man.
Absolutely.
They're firecrackers. They work hard. I mean, the younger one's got 2 or 3 jobs all the time. I mean, and she's like, well, they're trying to tell me I have ADHD and all this stuff. And I was like, there ain't nothing wrong with you. You just have a lot of spirit and a lot of energy. And so apply that in your life and do good and be successful. But that's not what they want, right? They want to hold you back away and get you dumbed down. I mean, their whole goal is that you'll have your visual glasses, your 3D virtual reality,
Virtuals, yeah.
and sit in your cubicle and play games all day and get your little stipend for $200 or 200 credits or whatever it is. And you'll just live in your little 10-foot square little space. And that's all you'll ever do.
Eat you a bug burger. Get you a bug burger up in there.
Little bug fish stick.
Little bug up in there. Yeah. I mean, it's so perverted that this.
And we're letting them do it to us.
That's what's irritating.
And it's Colorado counties, and it's all these other ones that I just mentioned. They're the ones that are going against the ethical grain of right and wrong. Well, it's defensible. Defensible, what do you mean, man? I mean, it's unjust, and so back to the dang Justice Center. How in the heck can we spend all this money? And the word is that they donated it, but we give them $900,000. I mean, what part of ethical? There's no ethics of that at all. Somebody is getting paid and got paid and continuing to. Why are they pushing so hard after 2/3 of us said that we don't want it? But then they try to say, well, it's a mandate, but it ain't. That's the crap that they're trying to feed you.
So if I'm one of them people that was involved in that, right? I'm coming in here. I'm calling you on the phone. Hey, what are you saying, man? What are you talking?
There ain't a single one. I've asked them all. Shannon, why don't you come in here? Shannon Byerly? Sir, I mean, you and I are, you know, I wouldn't say we're friends or whatever, but we sure know each other and we're on good terms as far as I'm concerned. I'd love for you to come on here so that you can answer some of these questions because we have questions that nobody can answer. It's crickets. Has anybody chimed in here on the live chat? No, not a single person.
Boy, they're tearing us up. They're tearing us down, boy. They're tearing us down with questions. But they're not. Here again, it's another telltale sign of this pattern of behavior. Is if you're upright and you're not contaminated with something, you come right up and tell somebody, looky here now, let's get this story straight.
Well, and that's why we got, you know, my hat's off to Bill because he's been gracious enough and said that he'll come on the podcast. And, you know, we have some pretty hard questions. What in my mind are hard questions, very revealing. They're not hard questions. They're hard line questions to the fact that, I mean, they reveal so much information. When you answer these questions, you're going to be revealing, you're going to tell the whole story of what we're missing here that is not on the record, is not in the transcript, is not on clerk and recording.
It's nowhere.
It's nowhere. But yet you spend $1 million from some ground and want to hang us up for another $40 million by the time we get it all paid off. And here's another thing that irritates the living heck out of me is they try to say, well, we can pay for it off of sales tax. Well, they don't go through and tell you how much they're going to raise the mill levy to do this. It ain't going to happen with sales tax. There's not enough money there. There's no way they can ever pay it off. And they say, well, we can dig up a couple $100,000 because we won't have to take the prisoners to Florence. You can't even afford the nurses to run the jail that you already own. So what makes you think that you're going to spend another $20 million? How is spending and building this kind of facility give you any money to run it?
I can't pay for the fuel in the Volkswagen. So I'm going to go get me a semi. And it's just bizarre.
It's bizarre. And it all leads back to it has to be somebody's getting paid. It's the only thing that adds up. I've run it through my mind. I've said it to you folks quite a few times. I hope that it's important, everybody, to share this with your friends. We do our best to we're not proponents of YouTube at all. But YouTube is easy to deal with, and a lot of people do YouTube, and that's why we continue to try to deal with YouTube, because a YouTube video, you can share that with your friend real easy, right? If you watch it, there's a share button right there on that video. You can share that, and it's real easy to share. That's one of the reasons why we deal with YouTube, and it's important that you share this with everybody you know. I mean, they're going to have to... They got to get it by the boat. And so here's something, I can't remember exactly how much we talked about, if any, last week, but they have this thing called COPS, Certificate of Participation. So the only way around the vote, right, if we stand hard with what we believe in and we vote this down again when they try to bring it to us, the only way they can get it down is what, I believe it was Montrose County. Montrose, what they've done is they call it a COPS, Certificate of Participation. Keep wanting to say precipitation. I wish it'd precipitate.
Yeah, no doubt.
But what they do is they would take the county off of the lease, and it would be a bunch of private individuals that put the money up, and then the county would lease that facility, or this group of private individuals would lease it to the county. And that's how in Montrose County they got away from undermine the people's vote. And the commissioners went ahead and did it. And I'll tell you folks right now, that's fixing to be a recall if they try to pull that shit. You try that here. You try to circumvent our vote, you're going to get your ass recalled.
Yeah, that's the real poll that's taking place.
I mean, there's too many of us that feel this way, right?
Oh, I don't know anybody that doesn't feel this way.
It's 2 to 1, right? I mean, that's a pretty large, substantial, no, we don't want this. And I mean, we've even talked to a couple of the elected officials. I mean, I'll just say right now, the coroner, Brad Balsley, and I talked about it. He said, I voted no for the Justice Center. And I said, dang it, Brad, they're still trying to do it. And he said, well, I guess I just don't maybe understand it. And Brad's been gracious enough as well that he's going to come on the podcast. And so he's running a pretty tight ship, right? His books are balanced. He's always open to showing anybody anything that he needs to do. I mean, one of the things that he said about the Justice Center, he was like, one of the things I didn't understand, one of the plans I seen said it had a basketball court in there, but yet there wasn't an office for the coroner or a cooler.
Crazy times.
So, I mean, you know, a cooler is somewhat important for the coroner to have so that we don't have decay and decompose.
That's a huge service to the family. It's a huge...
And
Brad is one of those beautiful people. Here again, he doesn't need to go to class to learn about ethics.
Well,
It's built in at the factory.
The thing about Brad, what sets him apart from some of these other guys, is that he signed the front of a paycheck. He's had a successful business, a successful private business.
Absolutely.
He just happens to have a passion for. And I personally, you couldn't. I
don't want that job.
I don't either.
I
You
appreciate him every day.
You couldn't pay me enough money to do it. I have no desire to be around that. So, I mean, I appreciate what he does. You know, he does a good job with it. It's a part of what he is and what he does. And we respect that, right?
He stepped up. I mean, he stepped up to fill, to fill that need.
But so anyhow, back to the Justice Center again. Why? I mean, I just, I'm completely open to scenarios from anybody. I mean, you can send us an email. The group, the live chat's always open here. Our IT guy's watching right now. If anybody happened to chime in and we didn't see it right, he could let me know that there's a question or a comment. I guess maybe that's good for us. I mean, if there's no questions, maybe we're explaining our point.
Yeah, and it's as this gets going and some of this stuff starts to come to light, and we get some relief, because it's kind of been an aggravating ordeal.
It's
trying to get something, trying to get to a point where we feel good about the accounting department.
Which we don't. We do not feel good about the accounting department at all.
No.
They're hiding something, or they would let us see it.
Well,
and they won't let us see it. They want to sweep it under. I mean, they've already shredded a bunch of documents. I mean, why did you do that?
Well, and there was an email asking them not to shred anything, that we needed to be able to hold everything still here for a minute, because it's our business and we don't want you shredding anything. So don't do it. Here again, another pattern of behavior. If you were upright, clear, and transparent, you weren't hiding nothing, you'd be bringing that out. You'd be showing all of it. That's how you'd roll.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. It's
Come on in here and looky here.
Yeah, look. Well, maybe something happened here. We made a mistake, but we caught that, and it's all good. They don't want us to see the books. If that was the case, they would have let Mr. Arrigo in there. He offered his services for free. He's one of the few people, regardless of what you pay, that can actually do the what do they call it, the ERP system.
ERP system.
And I forget what that stands for.
Yeah. Anyways, it's the foundation of the double entry bookkeeping system.
So
your columns are in place,
and there's so much more than just columns in place. It's the procedure of the procedure that has to happen to get the numbers in the column.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of setup there. That system has to be set up. And nothing against Fern. I know he's been working hard to try to keep us going. But he doesn't understand it either. If he did understand it, he's been at the wheel of that bad boy since it was installed. And that's the thing. It's a lot more complicated than an IT guy or an accountant can take care of. It takes a specialist, somebody like Mr. Arrigo, that has dealt with these systems in and out. I mean, his resume is so long. I mean, he's worked for billion-dollar companies, AT&T, and I mean, I forget all of the people that schools and all.
Coors. He was a big guy in Coors.
All kinds of stuff, right? But they wouldn't let him in there. And I understand that there was a little scrape. I mean, I respect Lynn. I think a lot of Lynn. Sometimes maybe he's a little bit
forward.
However you want to call it,
right.
A little overbearing maybe,
Sure.
know, and maybe some people got offended by his demeanor.
Yeah.
But yet the man still knows what he's doing, and the fact that he would do it for free and that they wouldn't let him in there. It's
pattern of behavior.
And they still don't have it done, right? There's still no heads or tails of the credit cards. I mean, said this before, we'll say it again. in 2017, they create a county statute that says if you spend money with a card, a county card, you have to bring the receipt back or you're personally liable. That all went out the door, but here's the problem with that. There was a problem beforehand, or they wouldn't have had to initiate that
Resolution.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had to say, hey, look, if you don't bring the damn thing back, you're going to be liable.
Take it out of your paycheck.
Obviously, there was people doing that before. They wouldn't have had to put that up. If everything was up on top of the board and everything was hunky-dory,
Right.
they wouldn't ever even had to go that far.
Yeah. So here again, we've declined in civilization somehow, and like you said, you mentioned the Common Core, and maybe getting some of the teachings out of the school that brought some uprightness. I think the Bible was a significant.
Everything that I learned from the ranch and from my dad.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, man, if you don't toe the mark, all the kindness happened from my mom, but all of the hardcoreness and the directness and the precision of what you're doing, that all come from my dad riding my ass. And I'm glad that he did, but I mean, it was a tough road to hoe, especially when I was young. When I was 10 years old, I'm running a bale wagon. I couldn't even lift the bales, but I can run the damn thing. And probably quite a few of you know what a bale wagon is, but there's grown men that can't run a bale wagon, let alone a 10-year-old kid. And so that's what taught me the difference between right and wrong, because if you don't do it right, you have to redo it. And that's one of my dad's favorite sayings. You didn't have time to do it right the first time. What makes you think you got time to redo it
Absolutely.
the second time? I mean, and this is the wisdom that human beings have lost. Now it's all about, but you're raising your voice. Well, yeah, that's because I can, folks. I have a loud voice and I have a commanding voice, and I like it. It's a free country. It's the First Amendment. I can say what I want to say. I try to be respectful and I try to be kind, but I also want authority. I demand respect. And that's what this is all about. But that's not what we're being taught, and that's not what our kids are being taught. And we've talked about this before, and I'm going to touch on it again. You need to start with yourself and with your family. It starts at the home. And I mean, I don't have any kids in school, and it's probably a good thing because I probably couldn't take it. I mean, I would, there's a very good chance that I would probably cross the line with some of the stuff that's going on. I mean, a decent friend of mine, I mean, he was on the school board. He's not on the school board anymore because he has to go in there and ask these teachers what the heck they're doing with his daughter, how they're treating her that way. Why are you saying this kind of shit? Transvestite story time at the kid. I mean, and it is so sick. Just look at what happened at the Olympics. And they're like, well, sorry about that. No, bullshit. Right? Whoever let that happen, that's what's the matter with society. The whole thing with Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney. I actually like Bud Light. I've drank a lot of different beer. If I'm going to have to drink beer right now, that's what I want to drink. That's what I like to drink is Bud Light. The best thing they ever got going after that was to get Peyton Manning back in there to try to salvage that thing. But the upper echelon of the people say, well, we don't know what happened. They made some decisions that we didn't know about. Well, maybe they did.
They were testing the waters.
But still, it's unexcusable. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. It's still the people that own the company's ultimate responsibility. And that's where we're at with this whole thing. It's our responsibility as the people of the county of Custer to keep track of our elected officials because they're not representing us properly. How can you go for a justice center that isn't needed? I mean, there's some updates that need to happen to stay in compliance. And back in the day when people lived and died by the 6 irons, right? I mean, if you didn't behave, then you got your ass shot. Things have changed. Things are different. society thinks they're more civilized, but they're not.
There's more protection for a wrongdoer than there is, for the person that's doing the right thing.
And so we know that there's provisions that need to take place. Part of the thing with the courthouse out of compliance, that there's no way for a handicap to get to the second floor. Understood, right? But these are all things that money can fix. Small money, right? We don't need to spend $20 million on a new facility. And just like we were talking about with the roof, we're still saying that they're going to try to say, well, we got to condemn the old courthouse because it's got mold. The reason it's got mold is because you took 3 years to patch the damn roof. It's
funny. There's some funny stuff going on.
I mean, the deception and the illusion or the disillusion of reality on so many different levels is so great. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to me of why and how we're at the state we're at, right? I mean, I just, day to day, I'm like, man, this is so mind-blowing. How in the hell can the zoning and planning lady think to this day, 7 years later, that the ground was donated? And yet the lease, the only thing that was there, the only piece of shred of information that was available from the Justice Center was the lease to the Chet Haga Trust before they found this damn thing. And they just happened to run across that down in the bottom of the basement. Why was this never given to Kelly? So we asked Kelly, we want everything that you got. She's like, I already gave it to you. All that we got's the lease. Really?
I was dumbfounded.
You're going to spend $40 million. By the time it's all said and done, now it's probably going to be more. That was 7 years ago. Right? So by the time that inflation, and I mean, we all know that stuff is way more expensive than it was. I mean, now we might be talking about 50 million or more. For what? So that people can get paid. We don't need this. We don't have the criminals to justify this. We damn sure don't need people from other counties coming into this county with their criminals. Take it to shit, man. Take that to Fremont County. Fremont County's got the most prisons anywhere. I mean, I don't know what the rate is, but I know there's at least 3 or 4 in Fremont County. So ship their ass down there. Yeah, does it cost? It does, but it doesn't cost nearly as much as this malarkey.
Well, one of the things that some of the people that live up here are concerned about is Denver and Aurora and the surrounding places there full of all these illegal immigrants.
Man,
and here's where we're at.
They're lucky they end up here.
Yeah, now they're here again. That big old grandioso low-income housing thing. Oh, we're going to do a bunch of low-income housing.
Workforce housing, but there's no jobs up here. What, there's 3 or 4 or 5 restaurants, and that's why we need workforce housing?
Well, they're saying the teachers, the deputies, there's some other things that... Inflation has kind of really caused some problems for people that are just starting out and getting their feet going and whatnot. You know what I mean? Getting their feet underneath them.
It's been a problem with society forever. It's called champagne wants on beer money. You can't afford it. You can't afford it. Don't expect me to try to cover it for you. I have a hard enough time trying to cover my own ass.
So at the end of the day, the government's trying to come in and save the day. And that's not what the government was designed to do.
And the problem is, in my opinion, the biggest problem with that is if they were true at heart would be one thing, but that's not the case. All these illegal immigrants are all designed for one thing, and that's to water down the population. It's already been proven. You look at Sweden, look at Finland, look at a lot of these other countries.
Pretty sad.
I mean, that's what Clout and Piven, the strategies of collapsing the social economic system. All our money has gone to these damned illegals, and we can't even take care of our own people, but we're willing to give this money to somebody that's a hardcore criminal. That is the most demented, perverted. And so we know what the deal is here, folks. If it was true and just, it would be one thing, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. A young family that wants to try to make a living and scratch a living out in this world, maybe they do need a little assistance. I'm not saying anything about that, and I kind of feel bad for them. But nobody helped me. I got to where I'm at because I worked hard at it, and I did the best I could, and that's where I'm at. Because I did it for myself. I didn't have the government give me a house. I don't get a welfare check. I don't get LEAP assistance for my heat. I don't get none of that shit. And I know that there's stuff that happens to people, but when you got fifth generation welfare recipients, that's a systemic problem of the society we live in. People are lazy. And I mean, that's part of the whole gripe with the Doge thing and Trump or whatever, how they almost got mixed up because, people are lazy. But that don't mean that we're all lazy. And that's the thing is we ain't all equal. That's why communism doesn't work, because I'm not the same as an illegal immigrant. I don't need to go to another country and get a handout from Joe Biden. I wouldn't do that. It's that ethical principle, that's that moral fiber that I'm not going to, that's why I would never, ever take food stamps. And to me, I would never eat food bought with food stamps, because what do they say? Money gotten by ill-gotten means turns to gravel in your mouth.
There it is. Yeah, and it's culture, it's a systemic deal.
It's systemic.
And once the government starts being that crutch,
And that's what they're planning on. That's the whole clout and Piven strategy, and that's what they're doing. They almost got us broke. I mean, we're circling the drain here, folks. It's bad. And I mean, a lot of people don't think that it's bad, right? They think, well, hell, everything's fine. It's fine. Hell, we need a justice center. Oh yeah, for what? Can you tell me one good reason why we would need a justice center besides that you're going to make money off of it? Nobody yet to this day, of all the time that I've been saying this, has told me a good reason why we need the justice center. Oh, Canada's going to say, well, it's mandated. I'm going to have to call bullshit, Bill. It's a bullshit flag. Throwing the bullshit flag there. It ain't mandated, pal. It isn't. And if you really think that's the case, you need to get educated. Because that's not the case.
See, and I think he is educated, but it's through those non-governmental organizations.
And part of it has to do with, and I appreciate everybody that served for this country and protected freedom. But when you are a government employee, it's easy for you to have that mentality. I mean, we talked about it with Brad. He said, man, this is completely different than anything I've ever been in. They said, if you don't spend your budget, then you don't get no money next year. He said, that's completely opposite of anything that I've ever done. He said, a private individual tries to save, and we try to conserve, and we try to be conservative with our resources. And he's like, this is a whole different ball of wax than what I'm used to. And that's the whole difference between, I've been saying this the whole time, the scrape of there's two sides of this coin, and it's all about how money is spent. This side of the coin thinks that you can just spend because there's plenty of tax money to just keep spending. And then you have the people that have to be physically, fiduciarily responsible for their own well-being, because otherwise you go broke. We can't go to the public till and get more money, Bill.
Well, it's going to catch up to us. All of this stuff, all the stuff that's kind of been done a little funny, it's all going to come out in the wash. It's just taken a lot of time. Pulling a few more core reports and doing some more investigative stuff. I think we're going to scratch enough to get it revealed and go ahead and get it.
We have a solution here, folks. We went through it really good last week. The solution is to find out what kind of legal upgrades that we need to stay in compliance with the law, which doesn't include a new justice center. It includes modifying what we have. I mean, when this report says one of the main things that's wrong with the jail is the kitchen, shit, Rich Smith fixed that. Hauled her ass to Canyon. Easy fix.
So at the end of the day, I think there's some good solutions that are going to come out of this.
The good solution is that we have to be responsible with what we're doing. We have some money, but we have to spend it wisely. And why these people would push and push and push and push and push against the will of the people, the only reason why they'll push that hard is because they have ulterior motives. It's the only answer. Ray Charles can see this. With that being said, it's about, we're already close to an hour and a half here. So.
You don't have any questions, huh?
No, I haven't gotten any questions at all. Like I said, Mike would be, I mean, if we had a big question, he'd call me right up and say, hey, we got a question. But I'm also kind of watching my screen there to see, and nobody's said anything, but we appreciate everyone. Please like and share. Tell your friends. Think about it. Think about what we're saying. Think about what this means.
There's a future at stake here. This is a really, really nice place to live. And there's things that have been put in place here, the zoning and different things. The people earlier had good vision. We don't want to waste that. We don't want to have this thing all, just criminalized is what I'm going to say, or taken advantage of and kind of wasted. And it's very likely that we're going down that road at a pretty rapid.
This Justice Center would be the biggest waste of resources that's ever happened, and all it's doing is lining the pockets of a few. This is the only explanation. There's too many red lights and there's too many facts here. Why is there no paper trail with this? Why in the heck can the planning and zoning, the lady that's in charge of the planning and zoning, say that it was donated? They bold-faced lied to her. They lied. And they lied. We're doing our best to come up with this article in the paper that says that they donated it. I mean, that remains to be seen. But obviously they said that, or the planning and zoning head wouldn't think that still 7 years later. With all that being said, folks, wish you a good evening. Try to stay warm out there. Be safe. Be kind.
Bring your puppies in. Make sure they're nice and warm.
Be great. Be great out there.
Yep. Feed them cows a little extra.
Till next week. Have a good evening.
Take it easy.